Good afternoon, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. This is the end of the week. This is where we get to take it easy and talk about the most clown world country that we all know and love, Canada. Indeed, we end our week's worth of live coverage here at Roxham with the most fiat nation in the world. And we're talking about fiat failures today. And I'm joined by Dave Bradley. As you all know, he has his finger on the pulse of the fiat failure that is Canada. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm really excited. It looks like as we pray for accelerationism in Canada, it seems to keep delivering in ways that we could never imagine possible. And since it is a Bitcoin show, I want to hear you react right off the bat here. This is a pretty funny one. A lot of people picked up on this, that Canada leading the league. We lost the gold medal in hockey, but there is something that Canada excels at. Beyond all other nations, including America, we are the greatest money printers in the world. We see here everyone decided to stop a couple of years ago. Here's the USM2, France, even Great Britain. Everyone has this little downslope, but no. We got a Mark Carney in Canada, and we're having a good time here. We're just printing the cash. This was one of the big stories on this week. So, here you go. Fiat failure in a nutshell. The only country that didn't at least pretend that the fiat Ponzi was over. They've been leaning in. So did you see this? Did you react to it? What are your thoughts?
No surprise. We've got to be the only country on that list that has like a foreign representative as our leader.
Good.
And so there's no surprising there. This is the looting graph. This is how much they're looting and their citizens, but we are the best.
Yeah, there's some form of counterbalance in some of these countries, decency or whatever. But indeed, Canada is the undisputed world leader in money printing. And it is pretty remarkable because, like I said, we see as Bitcoin the world through a Bitcoin lens. So to us, this is probably the most important graph to understand the vitality of the country and exactly what's going on. And I think this cuts through the entire story right here, that Canada simply existing outside of reality, even to a greater extent than crazy places like France or all these other shitholes. So Here you go.
Well, the playbook has always been they create an enemy and then they give you a reason that, the only way that you can be safe from this terrible enemy is us, the government. And the more successful they are with that tactic, the more leeway they're going to have with their nonsense. And so I think that's kind of the difference here between Canada and a lot of these other countries is you see, even though these are still evil globalist collectivists, Keynesians printing money to spend money in power in France and England and many other places in Europe, they at least have this almost like a fear of the population. Like if we steal too much too fast, they're going to come for us. And they've been so successful with the whole elbows up thing and the 51st state campaign that they're suddenly going to wake up all the old boomers in Toronto, and that those people are going to vote them out of power because there's no line too absurd to cross that would wake these people up.
Yeah, I'll talk about that because there's a case in point this week in Denmark. I have it in our notes that we're going to get to. And I've got a video actually of the Danish prime minister talking about how great Mark Carney's speech was in Davos. And then she called a snap election in Denmark and ate a shit sandwich as a result. So we'll get to that. But I agree 100% that that's exactly how I see it. Now, it was a remarkable week in Canada because of all of this stuff. We see here the Globe and Mail. There's a bunch of laws that have been passed this week. That's really what we're going to focus on. But I just want to talk a bit more about the economics here. The Globe and Mail mostly encouraged by their article about Alabama and the virality of the poverty of Canadians being akin to Alabama. It looks like Globe and Mail got a bit of algorithmic catnip here, so they went after it again. This one didn't quite get the traction the last one did, but it's true. Canada's economy is falling even further behind the U.S. in these key metrics. I don't really care what the key metrics are. They're all of the important things. But what's funny is that it relates to another key strategic bit of messaging that we saw from Mark Carney this week, which was military spending's up. We're meeting our NATO commitments. Now, think of everything I just said about M2 going up, financial supply, the amount of money in the market, the economy shrinking, and what we've known, even if you believe the GDP and all that. The funny thing is, CCV saying here, Canada officially hits NATO 2% target, but the truth is it's actually because the GDP dropped. It wasn't because they did more, but Mark Carney won't miss an opportunity, so he tries to sell it. He puts this note out here. We're rebuilding, rearming, and reinvesting in the Canadian Armed Forces to protect Canada and our allies. Now, one of the interesting things that Carney had this week, because indeed, like you said, the domestic Canadian audience is just too cooked. They don't really think about it and stuff. It's elbows up. But what's happening abroad is they're calling Carney's bluff sort of all around Carney now, the Americans in particular. You get this guy, John Conrad here. He's a merchant marine. He's been one of the leading voices in what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz. He's a consultant in the Pentagon. He runs one of the most important newsletters for maritime shipping. Here he says, you're a liar, basically. So what are you going to arm with? Sea kayaks? You have 0 carriers, 0 destroyers, 3 broken diesel subs. We can't even, it's not even about the diesel subs. We can't even get people on the subs. And he's talking about 14 subs is what he wants now, which is completely insane. We haven't had a problem. We have enough subs already. I think we got 7 or 8, but we can't get crews on them. And John Conrad goes further. More Carney lies. The country with the world's longest Arctic coastline cannot independently operate in its own northern waters during winter. Canada's flagship icebreaker, Louis Saint Laurent, was launched in 1966. She's 60 years old and is not polar class rated. It's a disaster. We don't really have a Navy. We saw Trump yesterday making fun of the British Navy, saying they're like little toy ships, and they, of course, join the fight when it's already over, and we don't need them, and using everything about the Strait of Hormuz to confirm what we have been talking about on this show for a while, that the Strait of Hormuz was more about flushing out NATO, more about the City of London, more about the unreliable coalition, and further underlining America's true coalition now, which looks like the Middle East and Japan. And here we see from what Carney's trying to do with this double dealing and lying about Canada's capacity, getting called out by allies. So where do you see this playing in Canada's military weakness and it actually being called out now? This is not we haven't seen this before, really, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another symptom of how extreme the looting is here, right? Like, we've spent a lot of money on military, just we've spent it on the Ukrainian military. And so, we're in this spot because the powers that be will, there's almost nothing useful they will spend money on, because they're trying to steal every cent and, send it to, there was all those things that were coming out after the Doge thing was going on in the US and people started finding them in Canada. Nobody ever turned them off in Canada. Like, they're just,
well, I got that in my
notes.
Shirley coming up. Nick Shirley
saw that $multi-million education for the wives of Afghan tribesmen, and
get them to MoMA.
Yeah, and they're going to take a banana and tape it to the side of a tent in Afghanistan. Like, there's no way that's happening, obviously, right? Like, there's not actually somebody over there trying to teach these people about modern art. They'd probably be killed very quickly. And this is obviously one of many, many money laundering schemes, siphoning value out of the pockets of Canadians with the money that the government has printed to pay their own corrupt infrastructure. And because they have so much money to steal, they don't have enough to buy an icebreaker.
Yeah, it's because we're definitely in an era of power projection here, and it doesn't look like we have any capacity to project power. And what's worse, like I said, this is foreign, ostensibly allies, as Trump called them, former allies, seeing all of this. They were crying about not getting notified about the Strait of Hormuz, of course. That was their big pity party a month ago. So here, foreigners calling it out. But it gets even worse. One of the reasons why it wasn't called out, we're finding out, is because the U.S. Treasury has sanctioned a Vancouver company for laundering 100 million Canadian trash tokens to Hezbollah terrorists. And indeed, that's why you see that the foreign affairs minister, I don't even know her name, but not a single word about all of this terrorist money being tracked to Canada. So how much do you think the United States is not even thinking us of not an ally, but actually part of the enemy class now? Is that what we're seeing from this stuff? Is it being acknowledged widely now that we have a major terrorist problem in Canada and that the plumbing is now getting called out?
I mean, I think the powers that be have known that for a long time. I don't think the average American considers Canada an enemy. I don't think we are enemies. I think that our governments are enemies, and our government very soundly does not represent us. The majority of Canadians did not vote for this government. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, we're just like any one of the other tools of the City of London, where they've got their tentacles out around the world, and they've got the Venezuelan and Mexican cartels and the Iranian regime, and has different paramilitary terrorist organizations that they've set up around the world. And Trump's taken them out one at a time. And our organized crime here that we've brought in is no different. So I fully expect that, when there's time, there's going to have to be something dealt with here, because Canada is the money laundering capital of the world.
You think it was like the Isle of Man or Cayman Islands or something, but it turns out Canada is just so far ahead of the list. Yeah. And then, Navarro talking about that right now. Here's Peter Navarro just yesterday. Here, I'll play the clip talking about what's going on with Great Britain and Canada. So here he is expressing what a problem it is that America has these weak allies that it can barely even treat as allies.
The WTO.
Yeah, so what I wanted to ask was, on the sidelines of that, there's some European and Asian Pacific countries sort of spearheaded by Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, calling for a separate agreement that sort of is intended to check the power of the U.S. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on whether the U.S. should be worried about that.
Well, no, the U.S. shouldn't be worried about that, but it's typical Carney behavior. We got a problem in Great Britain and Canada with liberal Trump haters. What's more important here of historical significance, and again, I go back to my earlier remarks. I mean, I've been saying, as Donald Trump has, and he said it first, that the WTO fundamentally is set up in a way to disadvantage the United States. It needs to be reformed. And Europe has finally heard that call, because it's a more important thing I'll tell you, because as we've protected ourselves from China and now the rest of the world, China has started dumping wholesale everything it can't sell to the U.S. onto the European continent, Latin America, Africa, all over the world. Its trade surplus is soaring, and it's doing really, really big damage, particularly in Europe at a delicate time. So what Carney should be saying is, hey, let's reform the WTO in a way that doesn't provide disadvantage to people.
So we're seeing more of that here. That's Peter Navarro. And then we hear, of course, that Carney is welcoming in the Chinese police force as part of that deal. Just like Navarro said, it seems to be all about helping China. Again, remember, Carney went over there and said let's be at the core of a new world order together, more or less. And it turns out China has more diplomats in Canada by population than any country in the world. It's a massive operation to spy on Canadians. And now Carney is enabling the interference by signing a law enforcement deal with Beijing. So how big of a problem is this Chinese infiltration thing? And is this the actual straw that's going to break the camel's back? Is this existentially dangerous for Canada to be letting in $100 million money laundering scheme getting uncovered from Iran? You could probably look the other way. But China putting in secret police stations all over the country, probably more difficult to ignore.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Obviously, the nice thing for Carney is when you sell the country, there are lots of buyers. So he's got a lot of people that he is taking money from. I'm going to say this again, and if it's not true, then Mark Carney should sue me. And Mark Carney is under the employment of the Chinese Communist Party. He's personally receiving money from the Chinese Communist Party. It's obvious, right? He's selling out our country, and this is just one of the many things that he's doing. And it's going to be hard to get out, frankly. And I think the simplest answer is to just cut the arm off.
Well, he is losing power in the sense that, I mean, he's close to his majority, so I don't think he's got to worry about elections or anything like that. And you'll see in a few minutes, there's probably not going to be elections anymore. I'll bring up some of the legislation getting tabled. But the rest of the world is starting to realize that his rhetoric doesn't translate into power. This is the story I was mentioning about Europe. Here was the Danish prime minister just a few weeks ago saying, "Oh, Mark Carney, he's great." And she was into the New World Order, like what he was offering with China. And then she said, confident that, because Denmark had a bit of an elbows up thing about Greenland. Can you imagine Denmark was even had a plan to bomb their runways? For anyone who actually believed the United States was going to invade Greenland doesn't deserve to be anywhere near power. There's just no way you should be anywhere near decision making if that's what you thought was going to happen in the world. But instead, she got her ass whooped and had to quit because she lost the worst defeat in 120 years for the Danish government. So we're starting to see that the Carney language rhetoric isn't really converting. We're starting to see it just stick within these chambers. And this is a confirmed feedback that it isn't sticking, that it is exactly what we said on the show. It was just a bunch of hot air and nonsense. So do you anticipate this isolation for Canada to result from this? Are people going to be more afraid to side with Carney in public? Is he becoming a pariah?
Yeah, I mean, he's not projecting political power anywhere in the world, certainly. I don't think there's anybody other than his little cabal of European leaders who has anything good to say or think about Carney at this point, right? He's just kind of in this steadily shrinking club while the world wakes up around him. And that's just what this is. And it's just one of many.
There was a hilarious political cartoon this week that showed the NATO table and Trump saying, "Where are all our allies?" And everyone said, "We're over at Carney's table." And you can just tell I don't know if it was The Economist or something like that. The Economist, by the way, having to have the Rothschild owner step down this week, which I thought was a funny story. So big changes over there. Now, one of the big problems with Canada, of course, is that you can't complain about it because we got the combating hate rule now. It passed the House of Commons this week. As Carney says here, it's a huge step toward our mission to build a stronger, safer country where everyone, no matter who they are or how they worship, can live free of intimidation. And just to show you how brain rot stupid this is, even Elizabeth May, even buck-toothed Elizabeth May came out and said, "What are you doing? This is terrible." And even she voted against it. She says here, "I'm disgusted and ashamed of every single MP. Nothing about it was to combat hate." And there she is, cursing and yelling at Carney and the Liberal Party, even though she's propped them up many times. So this is mostly just theater for all Americans watching who don't understand how the parliamentary system works. This is a freebie. This is a free shot, right? It's not real. She wasn't the deciding vote. But indeed, this is going to be more of that British stuff. It started last week already with that lady. We played the audio. Can't criticize the prime minister on the internet anymore. You're going to get the police at your door, a foreign police as well, of all insults to injury. Not even a Canadian, a naturalized Canadian, not a natural-born Canadian. So there you go. Can't even complain. So this is just one bit of the legal changes this week. But there's more. We're not limited to that. We're seeing there's a new election bill coming up. So I think this is the big one here that I was referring to earlier. So I think this will probably pass if he gets his majority. It's going to be one of these things where the government is now going to have a role in riding level or county level, district level nomination processes. In case anyone, I'm sure the audience doesn't know here, but 20 years ago, when the Conservative Party of Canada was born, it was born of two separate parties: Reform, which was really a Western populist party, as well as the Progressive Conservative Party in the East. It was kind of an East-West thing. The major point of the contractual combination of these two parties to create a unified right-wing party, which is what led to Stephen Harper's ascension as prime minister, was the nomination process. That was the big issue on the floor, so that nominations weren't dominated by Alberta population, that every riding itself was able to count their votes in an equal way, riding for riding. So the system in the Conservative Party, unlike the Liberal Party is just popular vote. Anyone who's a member votes. That's how they choose the leader. The Conservatives chose a method and have reconfirmed it at every convention where every county gets 10 votes, just like the prime minister. So it's no different than having to win a majority of seats distributed across the land in order to be the leader of the party and to have the party represented through those democratic processes. So it's foundational that the party itself controls the nomination process. This rule is going to change that. Under this new bill, Liberal government will oversee any political leadership race and even nomination races for specific ridings in any party. The government assumes Canadians is about censoring information to ensure people get truthful content during elections to stop interference. Of course, the number one source of misinformation. We see here from Rich Toronto, Canada may never have another Conservative government again. No, I'm not blackpilling. Everything is lining up for the Conservatives to never win another federal election. And the laws are going to change. It looks like, anyway, there's a proposal to do that. Here's Rich Toronto. So have you heard about this change? Is this something that we should expect in Canada? Is it going to get even worse for our democracy?
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of surprising if we ever have another Canadian election, to be honest. Unless something changes and we get one real soon. I think this is going to be one of many steps that this Carney government takes in this direction. And they're not afraid of authoritarianism. We've seen that. So I fully expect that as things get worse, because the looting gets worse, and as Alberta gets out of the mess, that what's left of the mess also becomes worse. And at some point, they're going to need to crack down on people a lot more. And so I fully expect, government employees with guns patrolling the bread lines in Toronto at some point, and we'll hopefully be a part of a different country by then.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. We're going to get to that. But this, I think anyway, just, look at the no complaining online or the cops are going to be at your door law that we just heard passed. Now they're getting into even their opponents' political nomination. Just think about that. For a lot of Americans like watching the show. Just think about what would happen if the Democrat Party controls the Republican nomination process. Just like the United States, Canada has the same problem, that the political parties, the number one difference between the political parties is the nomination process, especially what we saw with Democrats in the United States changing the order of their primaries. It was always sort of the way to do it in the States is to go to Ohio or Iowa and New Hampshire first in order to get the little states to have a chance to build momentum before they head to some of the larger states. It was a way to reconnect with rural America, that the candidates had to go to those states with an obscene amount of time. They usually spend about 3-4 months in Iowa and New Hampshire because of the first off the bat Trump enshrined that into the Republican Party's, I don't know if it's called a charter or whatever. But of course, Joe Biden changed it because they knew they were going to lose to RFK. So couldn't have that. There was no way a Kennedy was going to lose a Democrat nomination in New England. So they had to scam him out of it. So just to show you how powerful that is, right? And then here we get a new, the gun buyback rhetoric also changing here. The Minister of Public Safety comes out and says it's not going to be optional. Police forces in Canada are going to enforce the government's firearm prohibition. It's happening. Now, the optics of this, having a guy who barely speaks English, I mean, just let me show you what this guy sounds like. Well, his accent wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but nevertheless, it not a good look, and I don't think you're going to get a lot of farmers keen on following it. Everyone who is going to give a gun back, I think, already has. So what does that leave? I mean, think about what's about to happen. If he's saying that police are going to go door to door, this guy isn't really the messenger to say that, to these farmers. I think this is going to get a lot more backs up. I think this is probably the most radical video you could produce for Albertans at this moment in time. Seeing a Toronto fella with that accent telling them that the police are going to have to enforce the criminal code for gun seizures door to door. We're talking about door to door gun seizures now. That's not an exaggeration. That is. I don't think I'm reading through the lines here. I think that's what he said. He's talking about police enforcing the law. What does that mean? They're going to go, ask you, send another email again? I don't think so. I think those people already showed up. So we're on another crash course here for, I think, a radicalizing event in Canada.
Yeah, they have no idea. We've talked about this a bunch of times. They have no idea where the lines are. They have no idea how cartoonishly evil they look to the average person at this point. And every time they open their mouths, they create more freedom-loving Canadians. And that's really, we were nowhere close to Alberta separation only a couple of years ago. And these people have driven a huge number of normies to the point where they want out of this country because it's just it's obviously so predatory. Right? Like this is an evil organization that hates us. This is a group of people who want to steal from us. They want to exert violence over us without our ability to defend ourselves. And they really want to take everything about Western society that, the people of Canada have built and siphon it away. They're stealing our resources. They're stealing our money. They're stealing our freedom. And this is just the latest example. Like we're going to be on next week with a new example of something cartoonishly evil that these people have done.
Yeah, it's and like you said, this is some Newtonian physics here. It's equal and opposite reactions. This is I remember Christmas 2024, and Trump had just started the 51st state Governor Trudeau stuff, and no one understood what they were talking about. I said, guys, Alberta's gone. And they were like, Alberta? What do they love Canada? They're never going to separate. I said, it's over, guys. There's no way they're going to, this is not, it's going to get worse. They're going to leave. And we're not going to get our Quebec free money anymore. And they literally said, I've never heard that. My family was saying, I've never even heard of that. They've heard of it now, of course, and are petrified of it, of course. Part of my Christmas was actually canceled this year because that part of the family simply couldn't handle what was coming just for Christmas dinner, which was me saying, guys, it's over. So everyone was sick this year, apparently, and that part of my Christmas got canceled. And indeed, you see all of this stuff, and now we have the story of fraud. It's going to probably continue. Nick Shirley coming to Canada, asking here, should I go to Canada next? He was filmed at the border coming in, looking into all this stuff. Is he coming to Canada? What effect do you think are Canadians just too cooked for this to make a difference? Is this just going to be an online thing? Is this going to be something that actually gets traction with the average Canadian? Because it did work in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is, I think, as close as you're going to get to a Canadian worldview and a Canadian media environment. So if his good work was fruitful along the lines of awakening the public to the levels of corruption in a state like Minnesota, does it stand that it could do anything in Canada? Can Nick Shirley save Canada?
I don't think he can save Canada. I think he can wake more people up. Hopefully, there's this great awakening going on all across the country, and it's, so far it's looking like Carney's base of like soft brain boomers are going to continue to keep their heads in the sand and listen to the CBC and read the Globe and Mail and pretend that there's nothing wrong, but those people's kids are fucking broke. Yeah. And so there's a lot more people in this country today that are in a position in their lives because of the money printing that leaves them more likely to think like this is not right. And the more light gets shined on the larceny class, the better. I think the most likely scenario is that he finds something very egregious, like to the tune of we've got evidence that this particular MP is a direct member of the Chinese Communist Party working for the Communist Party, and here is the multi-billion-dollar theft that they have perpetrated. And this is just an example. I expect they're going to find something like this, and then they'll shut down that thing, maybe punish that person, maybe not. So far, there's been, it seems like every other week for the last 15 years, we've had a scandal big enough to sink a normal government, and the Liberals just keep ignoring them and keep having them. And so that might happen again. We might have a really, you might expose something really horrible. It gets shut down. Everybody moves on. We don't even lose any MPs. I could see that. That's probably something to that effect is what I expect from Nick Shirley.
Yeah, it's and when I think about what he's been able to achieve in the United States, the amount of dialogue that it's created, I just don't know if there's anywhere to put that energy in Canada. The United States has a really robust, treasury on its hands. It metastasized into investigations in California. Even the legacy media is getting in on it. Even they're talking about it, and it just doesn't look like it has any where to go in Canada. So I think you're right about it sort of dying on the vine and not really finding its way out of the echo chamber that we have in Canada. So I'm with you. I don't think he's going to be able to do much more than get a couple of egregious stories that get a bunch of conservatives to say, "Can you believe it?" And then most people say, "Yeah, I can believe it. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen," and should probably die on the vine right then and there. I can't imagine it's gonna. Luckily, though, it's already produced a bit of a meme. We have Olivia Chow saying "ICE out." She does a whole big video about ICE coming to Canada. So indeed, not understanding, I guess, that ICE, I think understands it has a territorial limit to its mandate. They can't just go around the world. It's not quite that simple. So despite all of that trouble, it gets even worse. We're not done with Carney's bad week. With all of the stuff going on in Iran, luckily Carney had a really important story to get to, which was the tragic airplane accident that happened at LaGuardia last week with an Air Canada airplane where it seems as though air traffic control sent a fire truck through the runway, and it led to both the pilot and the co-pilot of the Air Canada flight dying. And wouldn't you believe it, the Air Canada CEO sent out an email with his condolences to the families of the pilot and co-pilot. But number one story in Canada, it wasn't bilingual. And here's Mark Carney talking about what a tragedy in his awful French. I mean, just awful. I can't play it because his French is just, it hurts my ears. So watching a governor general who can't speak French and a prime minister who can't speak French lecturing the CEO of an airline who's just trying to put out condolences and turning it into the number one story, according to the government this week, that they didn't do the shibboleth. His French condolences were not very good. This is their big priority in Canada. But here you can see Carney at least has a couple tricks left up his sleeve, and this is one of them, to pretend that he's fighting for Quebec, I guess, or French language. But what would you rate this on a level of persuasion? Give me the two audiences here. Give me the boomers. Did they lap this up? And how repellent was this to average Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I doubt boomers are changing their minds about anything, really. They start losing their houses, that might change. You know, if we bring in this the wealth tax on properties that the Liberals are obviously angling towards. But yeah, I don't know. I'm shocked every day that more normal people are not waking up to this stuff, because it's so absurd.
Well, Canada is like the world leader in not waking up to this stuff, it seems, because Europe got it. I mean, they had a huge vote in the EU yesterday for remigration, and a big change happened where the centrists, both right-wing and left-wing centrists, all sided with the nationalist vote instead of the socialist vote. So the socialist open border faction of the EU got wiped out yesterday. And this led to, for the first time ever, a new coalition in the EU Parliament, which gives permission to all member states to harmonize their deportation laws with the EU. So they've gone for full deportation a la Trump. And now it looks like Europe pretty much aware of what's going on and pivoting pretty hard. This was a vote yesterday where you saw a lot of EU unelected members crying, having a lot of problems reconciling this. So Europe already, it seems, pivoting and changing, and the people definitely demanding this. Whereas in Canada, I just still don't see. I just still don't see it. I think a lot of those boomers really do think that this Air Canada thing's a real story versus the open violent crime they're experiencing throughout the home invasions of Southern Ontario and this kind of stuff. So is there anything that's going to do it other than just complete and total financial collapse? It doesn't look like it.
No, I don't. We don't expect, there's a black swan where there's something that is holy to these people that ends up getting destroyed by this call of collectivists that we've got in charge, and it's impossible to tell what that might be. So far, it's like it's looking like nothing is sacred to these people, and they will sacrifice everything about our society, their opinion of themselves within their. So it's a strong
one of the
delusion.
One of the predictions I made at the start of the Iran war was that once it was over, you would see a return, a pivot back to Epstein files and 9/11 declassification. My logic was the Epstein files had already been uninteresting because the threat or the potential of getting Trump was already lost, and it was clearly a Democrat scam. And no one was interested anymore. And if you look at all the search terms, it's about a month before the beginning of February was the peak. And then when Trump wasn't at the end of the rainbow, it turned back into they don't care, they're not paying attention, and it went right into the Iranian war. So I predicted that when Iran was ramped up, you'd see things start to manifest where Trump is maybe in it again because no one's interested in Epstein files unless you can get Trump out of it. So I saw a statue of Trump and Epstein go up in the Washington Mall, which led me to believe it's coming, which is why the tranche from 9/11 was kept out of the Epstein files, because that's going to be our summer reading and entertainment. We're going to find out more about that. You're seeing the Rothschild connections now come out this week, big time. Rothschilds had to divest of The Economist this week. You're seeing the Rothschild Bank in Paris was raided by the police there because of the Epstein files. And now, of course, thinking ahead to what potentially could get Mark Carney into real trouble. Of course, we know him and his wife are connected to it. If he wants to sue me for that, I'll take your tact here. Let's go, Carney. I say you're totally in the Epstein files, and we're going to find out a lot more. Do you think that has the potential, or do Canadians even talk about, like, do they care about the Epstein files? Is that a thing in Canada?
I don't know. I haven't really heard much speculation about Carney in them. He's part of that class, right? So we've seen pictures of him with Ghislaine Maxwell, and it's one of those things where, it's probably the only black and white issue in the world, pedophilia. Right? There are those who are shocked and horrified by pedophilia, and then there are pedophiles, and there's not really anybody in between. There's not like somebody who's like, well, it's not for me, but you do you.
Vitalik was for a minute. For a minute, Vitalik was for a minute, but he figured out it was not a good idea. Yeah.
But that's not the case, right? And if you are very high likelihood associate with pedophiles, even the very high likelihood is that you are also a pedophile, whether that's Vitalik or Mark Carney. I've never heard of somebody with an in the middle.
Well, they're just a little bit of a pedophile. Come on, it is in fact too many times.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only once. It's just pictures. Yeah, I agree. So all that said, it looks like the legacy media did take a bit of a turn on Carney this week. I'll play some audio here. This is, not expected, but all the bad news he had this week did finally get the CBC or the CTV, which is the second network in Canada, I guess you can say, to talk a bit about it.
I don't hear anything.
Oh no? Well, anyway, I'll just tell you what they say. So they actually do call out Carney failure. After 13 months of being prime minister, there's not a single promise kept. They do end up suggesting here that he should call an election immediately while he's still ahead in the polls, but I don't think that makes much sense, because he's going to get his by-elections, and then he's got a 4-year mandate, because, of course, in Canada, it's 5 years between elections, according to our Constitution, our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I don't expect him to try and go to any form of election. Do you expect an election in this time of year, even if it's his last chance, timing-wise?
I don't know why he would. He's, if he's got close enough to a majority, it's just a big risk. And I don't think that he's really that worried about staying in power for the long term. I think this is just a smash and grab operation, and he's going to try and get as much out of Canada as possible, do as many deals for Brookfield as he can, put as much money in his own pocket and the pockets of the MPs that he pays to stay or cross the floor, and just take what he can while the door is open.
But even the visuals of Canada, for example, I'll have my kids' sailing lesson tonight, and recently another homeschool family from here used our condo in Montreal to enjoy some winter, and they took a train down to Toronto, and the guys couldn't believe it, how many homeless tent shelters there were along the train tracks all the way to Toronto, like starting from the Ontario border, he said. So like Brockville right down to Toronto, every single town. And he's like, I just can't get my mind around being homeless in a tent in Canada. He goes, as a Caribbean, I think it's hard enough to be a homeless in a place like this, but at least there's showers on outside. It's high 20s every day. You can at least get clean. You can sleep outside. You can make a home on the beach pretty simply. We don't have many homeless. We certainly don't have homeless towns here on the island. And just seeing Canada in that state, I mean, I never saw a tent city or a shanty town in my entire life. I never even imagined it was possible in Canada. Like people living in tents until COVID was complete science fiction in Canada. The idea of a shanty town was just something that didn't exist in our climate. I thought of it as like a southern thing, not even something possible in the north because of the climate. I didn't think you could survive. And now we have shanty towns. He couldn't believe it. It was a whole topic of conversation down at the beach last week. And is poverty going to be enough?
I don't know. There's a lot of it now. Every Canadian full of this, and there's a lot of the money that is being siphoned away into this sort of government bureaucracy machine goes to setting significant infrastructure that supports the ability of, because you're right, like if a drug addicted people are, you're probably not going to be able to deal with the basics of life very well, and as a result, you're not going to be able to live in the to support that. And so there is a massive amount of money that in theory goes to help the homeless, but really is just a massive siphoning organization feeding the bureaucracy, keeping these people homeless, keeping them comfortable or relatively comfortable. Like, where did they get the tents? You know what I mean? So
I agree.
It's a
little stoves, like tents with stoves. Yeah, like exactly. They have some heated. There's a heater in it, and little chimneys and everything. Like I didn't even know such. I mean, I knew highly specialized tents existed for people who are climbing mountains in the winter and skiing and stuff like that. But those are the kind of tents they're in. It's not like loser tents, right? It's very expensive tents. All right, so last story of the week here on Roxham TV. It's the meme, can I have a pipeline to save my country and to save the world from energy insecurity and energy limitations? Best I can do is an MOU on methane. That's the best I can do. So that's what we get from the Prime Minister this week. Canada and Alberta reach agreement in principle on methane equivalency. What it means is the world is changing rapidly, guys. In response, Canada is transforming its economy to be resilient, competitive, and prepared for a low-carbon future. That's what everyone in the Strait of Hormuz is saying this week. That's what everyone in the world believes right now, is they have no gas in Australia. They have no gas in New Zealand. All of Europe is over a barrel. Everybody's saying, how smart is Trump to go? How lucky is Trump that he got the Venezuelan oil first? It's all luck, apparently, right? It was just luck. And everyone realizing right now, wow, there's a new petrodollar. It's really the LNG energy grid, electricity, money, and a complete revamping of the world economy. But no. We've got the low carbon version in Canada. Alberta should be celebrating because not only are the cows not going to be burping and farting as much because no one has money to buy steaks, you got your methane agreement. So there you go. Best I can do. You wanted a pipeline? Methane equivalency.
This is I haven't dug into this one, but I'm guessing it's a form of creative accounting on how they account for carbon in methane versus carbon in CO2. Yeah, and exactly. This is Carney's forte, really. It's just shifting the numbers around so things don't look as bad for him. And he's very obviously not giving up anything in this.
No. But Danielle Smith celebrated it. she said this was a good thing. Why is she playing ball with him? You have a good insight onto what's going on in Alberta. Why would she play ball on this?
That's a very good question. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to an event tomorrow called the Cornerstone Forum here in Calgary, run by a guy named Sean Newman. It's a great freedom conference, basically, and it's definitely it's going to be 95% separatists at this conference, and it's the core of the sort of Alberta conservative movement will be there, and Danielle Smith is the keynote for this event, and it's going to be interesting to see what this group asks of her and whether she actually spends a lot of time with the crowd, and whether anybody calls her to account for the fact that she has been pretty much towing the line on a bunch of globalist nonsense. And that's take the deal on the methane accounting, sure, like it's better than them screwing us on the methane accounting, which I without knowing anything about the deal, it's probably just a shifting of ratios so that in a good scenario, maybe the methane offsets will apply to Bitcoin miners who are capturing the methane from otherwise flared gas. So that could be a positive, but really, there's nothing there. It's not pro oil and gas. This is not turning back on the oil and gas industry. We're a very long ways away from that.
So you're going to report back next week. I want to hear all about this separatist meeting. I think this is probably one could consider, like you said, last year was kind of the first time and the energy was in the air because it was the first time it had to happen. Because I think the timing was right. Last year was just after the federal election, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I remember you being real pumped. But this can almost be like the founding of a nation type meeting this weekend. So I'd love to hear your take on the vibes and what people are saying and how committed people are and how many Madex stickers are going to see on the various cars in the parking lot and how close we are on the signatures and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows how close we are on the signatures, but the feeling is that we're way over already.
Right.
Whether or not that's true, I have no idea. But when you see the scope of what's been going on, it seems very likely to me that we're way over the number on the signatures. There will be a bunch of Madex stickers there. There'll be a combined booth for Bull Bitcoin and Bitcoin Mentor, and we will have a bunch of Bitcoiners in the crowd. We've got a Bitcoiners table, spreading the gospel throughout the crowd.
Are we going to have a Sean Newman appearance at the Bitcoin Rodeo this coming June?
That's a good question. I'm always bugging him. He came about 2 years ago to the Bitcoin Rodeo, but hasn't been in the last 2 years. So I'm going to be leaning on him at the pre-party tonight. See if we can get him down here. Yeah. So the pre-party's tonight, and then the actual conference is tomorrow. So. And
it's in Calgary.
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Unfortunately for anyone listening, has been sold out for a while.
Sold out,
looking like a pretty good event.
Well, we like to hear that. We like sold out separatist events in Alberta, Quebec, Ontario. Whoever wants to separate from Canada, we're here for the fiat failure. My money continues to be on Canada to be the first fiat failure country in the world, as predicted by the sovereign individual. And we're charting it all here. So we have probably the greatest diary of the death of Canada on the full compilation and anthology of this show. I think if historians want to go into the sedimentary layer of what happened, they'll get the full story here in the future. So if the AI that survives the apocalypse needs to find out how humans in Canada stopped existing, then they can come here. They'll get all the answers. There you go. Awesome, yeah. Dave. Well, I appreciate it, man. And I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
See ya.
Peace, man. All right, everyone. That was Dave Bradley, and that brings us to the end of our programming here on Roxham TV for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. I got to tell my producer. I hope you enjoyed the programming this week. It was another busy week in the news. A little more optimistic than last week, but indeed, I'm glad you stuck with us. If you've watched all my time online this week, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And for all of you folks that are about to head to your weekend, have a good one. Have a safe one. I'll see you all here Monday morning back on Roxham TV for another week of coverage. World's changing fast. Good place to find out and keep up with everything that's changing. Peace.